Hi all, in this video I'm going to introduce our very final unit of this summer course. It's called Monstrous Mark and it focuses on experimental drawing techniques. If I can get to the next slide. So experimental drawing processes occur beyond the boundaries of traditional approaches in drawing media. Artists develop experimental drawing methods to invent unfamiliar ways to use existing drawing materials that yield new, unexpected results. They use it as a way to ask new questions about drawing is and what can be for them that can lead them in new directions and inspire new creative solutions. And they use experimental processes to expand on or upend their existing understanding of drawing conventions or practice, kind of expand on what they're already doing. And then, of course, experimental drawing really leans into experimental, unexpected materials, methods, or theories or presentations of the medium of drawing, kind of redefining how a drawing's made and what it's made with. For this project, you are going to expand the possibilities of your own drawing methods by creating your own new experimental drawing processes. I really want you to reframe, retrain, and reinvent your rules and tools that you use to make a drawing. We don't have a terribly long time for this unit. So we'll be focusing on three different assignments. You'll start by doing a lot of experimentation with how you can create marks with different materials and different tools that you sort of discover yourself. You're going to document some of that material experimentation in a PowerPoint presentation. You don't have to present it, but we're just going to use the slide format as sort of a field guide of what you did and what you discovered as you explored unexpected methods for drawing. So I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. You're going to create one drawing that you make entirely by using experimental processes that you've discovered through your experimentation. And then you're going to make one drawing in which you use some experimental processes in combination with your more familiar strategies for drawing. Maybe some of the techniques that we've been focusing on in this class, or drawing techniques that you've really taken time to develop, through your own artistic practice. There are a few artists who really inspired this unit. The first of which is Matthew Barney. He is an American artist, and since he was in graduate school almost 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, geez, he's been doing continuing a project that he calls Drawing Restraint. But this little video kind of tells you where it started. It's taken a lot of different forms and really grown and changed over the last 40 years. But here he is in his studio just describing kind of the starts of the process.
Right from the start, I wanted to put my body into my work. I wanted to put my own experiences into my work. And the experiences I had had, which had been most profound, were on the football field, I think, at that point. So I think instinctually, I looked at those experiences and tried to draw them into what I was making in the studio, and started using my body that way and creating situations that put some sort of a resistance against my body. And I think as an athlete, you understand that your body requires resistance in order to grow. It's something you take for granted. the whole training process is built upon that understanding. So I think when I was confronted with this idea of being in a studio and generating form, it was a way in which I could understand form being developed with a self-imposed resistance placed upon it, as it does in the body. So those were the ideas that started the drawing restraint project.
So one of the best things about drawing is just how accessible it is, how simple the tools are. Typically, the drawing tool are comfortable and light in your hand. The distance between your hand and the surface of the drawing is usually, less than an inch. Um, so many things can be a drawing tool, so many things can be a drawing surface. Um, and you can get pretty predictable results from, most of them, especially if you're an experienced drawer. So actually actively seeking a way to make drawing uh, more challenging, to make it, a surface hard to reach, to make a tool kind of longer to access, to make you have to jump on a trampoline to be able to sort of get the mark to land where you want, is really going to change the resulting marks and change the way you think about the experience. And so that's one sort of avenue that you could think about as you're trying to think about how to experiment and expand on drawing. Is like, how can I get it to push back a little? How can I make it a little harder? And see where that takes you. Or can I combine it with another activity like Matthew Barney is combining this drawing practice with calisthenic sort of strength building techniques that he learned from sports. So that could be another way to sort of access two areas of interest and bring it together to see what kind of drawing they make.
Right from the start, I wanted to.
The next one. So Joyce Hinterding is the next artist we're going to look at. She's using graphite, which is, of course, a very traditional familiar drawing material, but she's actually engaging another one of its properties, graphite as a mineral. Um, uh, actually is a pretty good conductor. She also says it's a resistor. And so what she's doing is running electrical currents through graphite marks on a paper and actually you turning that current of energy, kind of using it as if it's an instrument. So I'll let her speak for herself, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that changes the way we think about making a drawing.
Graphite is both a conductor and a resistor. These are just paper clamps. And so they're not microphones or anything like that. They're just paper clamps. They're just clamping onto the graphite. And these two wires here are connected to the microphone input on the mixing desk over here. It's basically looking at the drawing and it's listening to the drawings. Drawings acting in place of a microphone. I've been working with these induction drawings for quite some time, and I get a slightly different result in all different environments and with different shapes. I think at the point that you touch it and you realize that it's alive, that there is electricity running through the drawings change. And I guess part of that point for me is to open up a conversation about the fact that graphite is conductive. There's an aesthetic possibility here as well, that it's a kind of musical instrument in its own way, except that's, it's like a 60 hertz musical instrument.
So when using a familiar material but giving kind of engaging a different element of its function really will mean you're probably thinking differently about the marks. You know, when you're asking them to make a sound, and not just make an image, but there's also still a visual element to it. You know, it sort of brings you in different directions, different purposes for the marks. If they need to, they probably need to have a certain character for them, to be able to carry the current the way that she wants. So that's also going to factor in, to the creative and aesthetic choices that she's making. Finally, there's an element of interaction. So she is giving, not just creating a viewed experience for those who come to this work. She's also inviting them to interact as well. So that changes how you share the work. You know, you can see it's on a table, and the takeaways of the work, of course. So more things to consider. I'm sorry, I keep starting those videos over. All right. Kind of in the broadest sense, the thing that always unites a drawing process is the mark. They don't have to be there doesn't have to be similarity in the kind of mark, but drawings, both traditionally and in a contemporary context, rely on there being a trace of a movement. And that's what Olafur Eliasson is really exploring in his Connecting Cross Country with Line project. So here he's created a machine that does the drawing for him. This is a ball bearing that's dropped in a charcoal or graphite powder. That's a material I also have in class, that I can make available for you all to pick up if you are interested in using it. But you could probably also just crumble up some of your vine charcoal and get a similar material. There's also sidewalk chalk and the kind of chalk pigments available at hardware stores that would do some very similar thing. Makeup has also had a function similar to being able to leave these kind of choices. But something else to think beyond the idea of a drawing being an artifact of a train ride, and that kind of puts the result in sort of a map-like context. The marks are made fully by the movement of the train. But another element is the fact that the hand and the body of the artist is sort of taken out of this process, except for, you know, initially laying the ball bearing onto the surface. And so that's another way to kind of think about making a drawing, sort of how much of a hands-on process does it have to be, and how does the drawing change if you are eliminating your hand and body from that process. Tim Knowles is an English artist who does something kind of similar. So sets up situations for drawings to happen without him. In his case, he's really interested in nature making drawings. So he sets up these nice artist studio setups for trees and lets the breeze kind of direct the mark. Usually he's using ballpoint pens. And you can see the ink really pools when the branches stop moving. But also the length of the marks is defined by how much the wind is able to blow the branch and the kind of range of motion of the arm of the tree or the branch of the tree. So kind of lovely. I always think they look the resulting drawings have a natural sensibility to kind of feel a little bit like roots or veins. That kind of feels like a portrait. All right, Karina Schmigla Babinski and Rebecca Horn are two drawing artists who are making their own kind of drawing tools and either interacting with their own bodies or inviting a kind of interaction. So the Ada ball has sticks of charcoal attached to it, all of its sides, and then creates a room as a drawing surface or environment. And then invites participants, depending on how people interact with this drawing tool. They have very different kind of marks, just like every drawing tool, but of course, this is kind of an unusual one. Rebecca Horn did this drawing mask. I kind of love that the pencils are placed on the bony landmarks of the face. You'll sort of notice those structural landmarks we were just learning about. So that's a kind of layer of connection to drawing process traditionally, but of course it's a very untraditional sort of drawing to be able to make. Drawing with her face, using the range of motion of her head to kind of define the length of the marks. I always like thinking about what it would be like to be making this drawing, what the paper would look like as you're going. It's a different distance to be working from a drawing, which I think is pretty cool too. All right, so how do you begin? I want you to just experiment wildly is a good way to start. So look around your house, inside, outside, garage, bathroom, and just find materials that you could think would either be able to leave a mark, and so you could draw with as a material or a tool. Um, uh, what I want you to do is as you find things that you want to try an experimental drawing process with, I want you to kind of set a rule for yourself that every new material or experiment you try at least 3 distinct ways. I don't want you to abandon any idea too quickly. So, plan for 3 different ways to make with whatever material you're discovering and having in mind. So different ways to make: drag, stamp, roll, pour, spray, scratch, smear, blow, dip, drop, any of those, or more, but try each thing 3 different ways. As you work, I want you to do 2 things because this will get you what you need for the first assignment. So as you try each experiment 3 ways, I want you to take photo documentation of your experiment and also jot down a few notes about what you did during the experiment so you can add a little bit of context to your PowerPoint that you're going to create about your experimental processes. So answering these few questions. You can just do it, in your sketchbook initially, but those notes and the corresponding features or photographs will give you what you need to put your presentation together. So this is a example of the PowerPoint slides that I'm going to ask you to make. I'm going to want you to make 5 slides. So each slide will have the resulting photos and reflection for one experimental process each. So this was electric toothbrush drawing. The 3 different ways that I drew with an electric toothbrush, I attached a graphite pencil to it. I attached compressed charcoal to it. And then I sacrificed one of my toothbrush heads and dipped it in a little wash that I made with some ink and water, and got these 3 very different results. I identified the materials I used for each test on the slide, and then wrote a little bit of a reflection, description of the processes so I could remember what I did to get those marks, and also a little bit of reflection of how effective I thought the experiments were. All right, so those are going to be the components that you'll have on each of your 5 slides that you'll be submitting for your first assignment. The other way to really be able to get started is to do some ideation sketching about what kind of experiments you want to pursue. Sometimes doing a little sketch process before you sort of have those materials in your hands gives you a little bit of a better roadmap. So here I was scheming about drawing with a fishing pole. I thought, well, how could I get a fishing pole to draw? Maybe I could put a piece of paper on the floor and then use the reel to sort of drop a piece of charcoal down and reel it up on the piece of paper. I then thought about, well, maybe if I could also not just use the reel, maybe I could use some kind of pendulum motions or rotation, move the fishing pole with the um, drawing material attached, and get different kind of marks. A third test, I thought, well, what if I get a larger sheet of paper and maybe attach it to the wall, and I see if I can use the casting motion to reach my tool all the way to a surface of the paper. What kind of marks would that result? So 3 different ways to try it. This next little animation is illustrating. My idea started with drawing with shoes. Maybe I could put something that makes marks, pastels, or pencils right on the laces and drag them around. Maybe if I had different kinds of shoes like high heels, and I could use a stepping motion attaching some drawing tools to the heels and get a different kind of mark. That also made me think, well, maybe I could also expand the idea and be able to attach to more places if I was drawing with socks instead of shoes. So maybe I could be attaching a whole bunch of different materials by stitching or gluing to a sock and then walking over a surface. So again, then what I would be able to do is I have, a few different ways to try that idea. I can go home, gather the materials, have some thoughts about how I'm going to, create these drawing socks before I even create them. And it just gives me, these sketches kind of give me a head start. I'll still want you to apply those techniques for the PowerPoint, but if you're just feeling stuck or you want to get started before you're able to actually gather materials, doing some ideation sketching is a really good move. All right. I think that's my last slide of the PowerPoint. But hopefully this is helpful. What you'll see next in this module is you will see just the PowerPoint version of this presentation. So if you want to review any of these slides yourself, click the next link. And then below, what you will find is the full assignment for the experimentation assignment and the resulting PowerPoint. Please let me know if you have any questions. The drawings that you create, both for the experiments and the final works, can be quite small, and be sure you are keeping in mind that we only have a week and a half to get through each of these drawings. So I would aim for no more than 3 hours to complete each assignment in this unit. So keep things relatively simple and low key. You'll still get a lot out of it. All right. That's all for now.